Is it rolling now?
Yep, it's rolling.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Rhonda Sandberg. Should I say I'm my dad's daughter?
Sure.
Sure. This is
Daughter of Roland W. Sandberg, great teacher at Wilson High School. My father got me into music when I was 2. And he was a pianist, and I showed a fascination for piano, so he started teaching me piano at 2. And then he noticed when he'd be playing the piano, if I was in the other room, he'd hear me say things like, "Daddy, you missed an E flat," or "You missed an A," and he thought, what's wrong with her? And so he brought me in, and he put me back to the keyboard, and then he started playing notes, and he found out that I had perfect pitch. That's how he discovered it. And so that was kind of an interesting discovery for him. It was a little hard for me sometimes, though, because if something was out of tune, I'd get a headache. So.
Oh, wow, you're really sensitive to the chords, and
Yeah, he showed me how to work through it too. He said sometimes you just have to ignore it or think tempered, because I have pure pitch in the upper register, and the tempered scale is a little flat on the higher end to me. So he said if you can think that way, then you'll be able to hear the pitches a little easier. It won't give you a headache. So.
you would hate to hear me sing.
Oh.
I can't sing the
I've
way-
worked through all that now. It'd be no problem.
Okay. So your father got you interested in music.
He did.
And piano was the first thing. 2 years old. I don't suppose you were taking lessons at 2.
I was.
Really?
Playing like this because I was short.
Was your father your teacher? or
Yes,
did
all the
you
way
ha-
through.
Okay, so you didn't have any other hired teachers at the time?
Nope,
So
didn't
was-
want any.
Was piano your only instrument you picked up through
No,
the years? Or-
he taught me flute because he wanted me to have the band and orchestra experience in school. So I played the flute, and my grandfather was a professional violinist, so I learned the violin, but I never was that good at it. So it disappointed my grandfather. But
It's a little you have to have that dexterity in that, right?
Yeah.
So flute, and you played that through, I'm guessing, elementary
All the way through.
school?
all the way through high school,
And you went, what high school was it you went to?
Lakewood High School.
Lakewood, okay.
Yes.
All right. The Vikings.
Lancers.
Lancers, okay.
Yep.
Good. So when you got to high school, what are your memories of the marching band?
The main thing at Lakewood High School was the blackout shows. And that was kind of their thing at Lakewood High School. No one had ever done anything with lights on the shoes and lights on the hats. And so it was interesting because in comparison to Wilson High School, where my father was, he would work really hard in getting the students to go to their places for the formations and not have to go very far. When I was at Lakewood High School, the director didn't pay attention to where each individual kid went. So for each formation, we'd have to run across the field, back and forth, hopping and dancing. I was a song girl. And so we had to run back and forth a lot in order to get into our positions. So my dad was very meticulous in making sure the kids didn't have to go very far to form the next formation. So I noticed that because my dad was at Wilson, I was at Lakewood, the differences between the two groups. We were all about kind of show. You know, everything was showy. We did fireworks. We did that kind of stuff. My dad was more about how did it sound, how did it look, and doing it to perfection. That was him.
Seems like he was very efficient with moving the band
Very.
around and not, yeah.
Oh yeah, and he did all of his own charts. He didn't do any canned charts. And he would start working on the band shows right after the end of school in June. And he'd work through the summer and get everything ready for the fall. He'd start right away.
So I'm interested in this blackout show. Can you
really?
tell me what is the blackout show?
Blackout show would be, ladies and gentlemen, the famous Lakewood Lancers blackout show. Boom, the lights go down, and then all of our little lights light up. We had like these pen lights. I was a song girl, so a lot of times we'd have flashlights that we would dance with and that kind of thing. And then the audience would go, ooh, ah, because everybody likes lights. And then at the end of every show, we would do fireworks. So it didn't matter how crummy the show was, didn't matter if we sounded good. If we had the lights and the fireworks, everybody thought it was great.
Okay.
And so the other schools always thought it was a little cheap. But we had fun with it. My dad did a few blackout shows too.
And those were all on the football field during
Yes.
the
Halftime.
Okay.
That is the coolest thing ever. I just have to say that sounds awesome.
It was fun. You know, that's entertainment. That's how it was.
So when you were at Lakewood, or maybe not, when was the first time you heard the term syncopated drumming?
I heard it when I was in junior high. I became aware of Marvin Marker's band. And I heard that they were great drummers. And I always liked the sound of drums and stuff. So I went to one of their concerts one time. And I noticed they were all about the drumming. And it was kind of like a little club almost. They were very tight. And whoever was in their drum line had to work really hard to get in it. So it was sort of a real in thing at that time.
What year was that?
That would have been in the early 60s.
Early 60s?
Yeah. I'm dating myself.
Okay. So the first time you've heard that drumming was junior high in the 60s.
Yeah.
Long Beach Junior Concert Band.
That was the very first time. Then I started going to my dad's football games, and I heard them doing it. And then I loved it so much that I would go to some of their rehearsals during the summer. And I'd just go with my dad over to Wilson and hang out and watch the drummers. They'd stand in a circle. They'd go on and on and on. My dad would have a rehearsal for 3 hours with the whole band. He would dismiss everybody, and the drummers would say, "Can we stay like an hour more?" And he was nice. He'd just let them drum, but they just loved it. And he loved it because he went for the big brass sound. He had a big band, and he had a big sound in his group. So that kind of drumming really fit. It was thundering, it was really very rhythmic, and it just fit his style really well.
Do you think there was a time when, before there was that drumming your dad was working with, was there a certain year it might have came to be at Wilson High School? Or
He got there in 1961, and he was very much aware of Marvin Marker already, and he appreciated that band and how good they sounded. So I don't know this for sure, but I have a feeling my dad may have sat with him and talked with him and said, "How come your drummers sound so good?" And they would talk about the different cadences. And some of the kids that were at Wilson were also in the junior concert band. And so I think there was a cross-pollination, if that's the right word,
Sure.
of those kids bringing it into the schools. Some schools welcomed it, some didn't, but my dad definitely welcomed it.
and was, would you?
Pause 1 second. You have hair that's like.
Is it going?
Yeah, it's just. I think if you saw it, it was like crossing. I just wanted to uncross.
Oh yeah, that happens. My hair creeps.
Yeah, mine does that too.
It
That's why I'm
creeps
like.
under my neck. Yeah.
Give you a second to adjust it so that the whole interview isn't.
It does have a life of its
Oh,
own.
you're good though. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay.
Greg.
All right.
That's the girl stuff that happens.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, men are so fortunate. I mean, like yours stays right where it's supposed to.
No.
By the end of the day, I'm like this.
I know. Use of hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
So that's very interesting, and that's something I'm really interested in, is how Long Beach Junior Concert Band influenced the other schools in the surrounding Long Beach area.
The seed began with them. That's what I would say. My dad was smart enough to go with it.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad did not create it. I mean, he loved drumming. He played every instrument, including drums. But he loved it so much, he incorporated it immediately.
Do you know if when you were at Lakewood they had that same drumming going on? Was it similar?
At Lakewood, we were not very disciplined in our band. It was kind of like everybody for himself. So there would be some drummers who were also in the concert band, and they would try to teach the other ones, but they didn't want to practice. So it was kind of sloppy. So you never had that really tight sound. They would try a few of the cadences. There was one cadence called Candy. You probably remember that one.
I know that one.
That was everyone's favorite. And I remember our poor drummers were trying so hard to get it, and they just never did. And a lot of the girls who would march with the band, and even the band members, the players and stuff, they said, stop trying that cadence. You're not doing it right. Just do a straight beat so we can march to it. They couldn't feel it somehow. And they didn't want to practice enough to feel it. So
Yeah.
my dad was the type, okay, if you're going to do it, you're going to practice until it's perfect. And then, of course, they even added some choreography to it. Do you remember the little bit of stuff they would do?
The drummers?
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you describe it?
Well, they'd start, before they'd go into candy, they'd go, dun, 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 rear, and they'd all bend back like this. Oh, it was so exciting. Then they'd come onto the field that way. That's how they would do it at the football games. And then they would do it, they'd count off that way at the parades too, and it drove the crowds crazy.
One,
So my
two,
dad was
three,
really, yeah,
rear.
dun, 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 rear. And then they'd come out, and then they go, bum, 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 bum. And then they go into candy, and everybody's just like screaming. I can see it and talking about it. When we'd go to the football games and they'd come across this way, oh my gosh. I mean, the people in the stands were just, they were beside themselves. They were screaming and yelling. It was wonderful. And then my dad would use that syncopated beat. He was kind of a show-off because he had a big band. And so he decided, I think we talked about this on the phone before, he decided to bring 4 people out at a time, lines of 4. And they had like 300 in the band. So he'd start out and they'd have the great syncopated beat, and each line would do the rear when they came through the gate. And they'd keep going, and here comes the next line. And because the band was so big, they're going around the track, and it's like, they just keep coming and coming and coming and coming. It's like this giant band. It was hysterical. And then finally, when they'd all get around, then they'd meet over here. Then they would come across this way, and they would do that same count off, do the rear. And the whole audience would yell rear when the drummers did too, because they all knew what was going to happen. It was cool, and it was exciting. That was one of the reasons. My dad loved showy if it was done well. And anything that would excite the audience, he loved. And they'd have this huge fanfare they did with the brass, and it went along really well with the drumming, syncopated drumming. So I'm talking a lot, aren't I?
This is fantastic.
This is all great stuff.
Is it? Because you're probably going to have to go cut.
No, it's great.
No, this is great. So the audience participation was almost as much of it as the actual musicians.
And they started to know those cadences too. The audience did. So they'd have, like if they had popcorn, the buckets of popcorn, when the band would come out, they'd turn their buckets upside down. They'd beat on the buckets along with the drummers. It was so fun to watch.
Wow.
It was a very exciting time in Long Beach. It really was. And the bands were competitive. They would meet for the Milk Bowl. Do you remember the Milk Bowl?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Did they have that in your year? Yeah, and, oh, am I getting my hair?
You're fine. You're
okay.
fine.
So all of the bands would be on the field at Long Beach City College. And I have to say, I was proud of my dad's band because they were the most exciting. They get the crowd going. But it was because of the syncopated drumming. And that's why I'm glad that you're interested in that, because that was something you just don't see anymore. I don't see it with college bands or anywhere. And it's an era that I think maybe is gone, and it's a shame because, my gosh, the people loved it.
Do you think, would you say it was a definitive sound of Long Beach?
Yes, definitely.
Can you say that kind of back in a sentence so that we have his question as part of it? Like,
Oh, sure.
Right.
sorry if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Let's see, how can I put this? I would say that the syncopated drumming sound was definitely a definitive sound for the Long Beach district, very much so. Because I went to other festivals and things, and I would hear other groups, and it was never the same. It wasn't quite the same. That thundering, very rhythmic, exciting sound. That's good.
Why Long Beach? Sorry for jumping on you, Greg,
No.
and tell him. But why do you think it was here?
I'm asking him.
Or he answer to Greg instead.
Why
of
do
me.
I think it was in Long Beach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, culturally, maybe because we're kind of a melting pot in Long Beach. A lot of beach towns are like that. I'm a melting pot myself. Hawaiian, Portuguese, Spanish, Chinese, Puerto Rican, Swedish. But when I grew up, a lot of people were like me. And so in parts of my culture, that rhythm is it's almost visceral. You almost have to have it. You want that when you're doing anything that has to do with any kind of rhythm, right? You're moving to it. And so I think a lot of the kids wanted that because they felt it. And I'm not sure, the fact that it's changed now, I'm not sure why, and it could just be what popular music is now. You know, I think popular music does have something to do with it. But Long Beach very much is a melting pot at that time.
That's a good